Alors, avant de se quitter la scène, je vais appeler notre prochain invité. On a beaucoup parlé de nouvelles choses, on a beaucoup parlé de nouveaux horizons, de découvrir ces nouveaux horizons sur ce début d'après-midi. Et notre prochain invité, c'est quelqu'un qui va venir nous parler un peu plus de la portion humaine dont on a commencé à parler, surtout dans les phases de questions. Et c'est quelqu'un avec qui j'ai eu le plaisir de collaborer de façon un peu indirecte. C'est un entrepreneur extrêmement inspirant. C'est le chef des entrepreneurs en résidence au Centec. C'est le président du conseil d'administration de l'organisme Relief. Je vous présente Martin Enault qui va nous parler d'un sujet extrêmement difficile mais ô combien important, la santé mentale.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone. Really happy to be with you today. As was mentioned, I talk about mental health, so don't expect to hear from a therapist or a doctor. I'm definitely not a doctor. I'm an entrepreneur living with bipolar disorder, living with anxiety and depression. I'm also dyslexic, OCD, and many, many other things. So my experience is the one from my life. And what I want to talk about is how in your career you can actually link your well-being to your success and your success in business. We often think that if you suffer from anxiety, if you suffer from depression, the one thing that's going to stop you from, it will be the main thing that will stop you from progressing in your career. It's not true. I work on some of the largest festivals in the world. I work on some of the largest shows in the world. I worked in over 80 countries worldwide. I've traveled the entire world living with bipolar disorder, living with panic attacks, living with anxiety and depression. Imagine being at the front gate of a festival like Coachella, Bonnaroo, Lollapalooza, Tomorrowland, or many others, and you know you're at risk of having a panic attack, or you're at risk of dealing with a wave of depression. Well, it's not true. There's nothing you can do about that. The first thing that I've realized, both on mental health and career in general, is that if you are able to understand that you have the impact on your career that you choose to have and on your life, it's not for other people to make you feel better. It's not for other people to cure you. It's not for a doctor or psychologist to tell you what to do to feel better. It's really for you to get the tools you need so you can deal with doctors and psychologists and the people around you in ways that are good for you. When I started my career, just thinking of giving a speech like this in front of you, both people at home and people here, would have made me sick for weeks before and after. And I can tell you that it was a great pleasure for me to come here today, especially seeing people in person. I've given over 150 conferences virtually in the last year and a half, and this is the first time I actually see people. So thank you, Yano, for inviting me and making this a reality. So, as I was saying, when I started my career, I started more on the technology front. I was a consultant and network engineer. I dropped out of university because of my dyslexia. I've realized that university for me was not the right path. For others it is, and nowadays it is for a lot more people. But back then I felt like a misfit that needed to find his own ways, and technology was that solution for me. I then migrated into the event industry and became general manager of a ticketing company called Ticket Pro that actually does the ticketing for this building. And I moved on producing exhibits, working on, like I mentioned, the largest festival in the world. I designed the first technology that enabled to do access control and cashless payment in large music festival and toured the world with that. And then throughout those years, a lot of people saw me as a successful entrepreneur that was traveling from one country to the other. But in reality, I was struggling day after day with feeling unhappy, feeling down, feeling depressed. I didn't know I lived with bipolar disorder back then, but I knew that panic attacks would freeze me constantly, that panic attacks would bring me to think that things were impossible to do while they were possible, and I just kept having to push myself forward. It was painful. It was definitely not a fun time of life to think about saying you're doing things that most people dream about. I was working with the largest artist in the world, the most important artist in the world, yet I was not enjoying any of it because I was not able to take care of my own mental well-being. When you think about entrepreneurship, when you think about your career, you often think that the way to be successful is work massively more hours and just do 60, 70 hours a week and be able to go and become a manager, become a VP, become a CEO because you work harder. What I realized after working weeks of 80, 90, 100 hours for a lot of my life is that it's a lie. When you work too much, you become less creative. When you're less creative, you have less success. And when you're able to live a life that's fulfilled and creative, then that's when your overall well-being becomes better. Mental health is not, it should not be a taboo subject. When you look at your body, the brain is what controls the entire body. So why are you ashamed of something that happens in your brain when you're not, when something happens to your arm or if you live with another disorder? The reality is mental health is part of all of us. Regardless of if you feel you've never dealt with anxiety or depression or bipolar disorder, imagine having 10 glasses in front of you, each filled with a different level of water. And that's the level you are of anxiety, of depression, of dyslexia, of OCD and such. That makes you who you are. And that is a unique part of you that helps you go through life. And once you start being unafraid and actually being courageous enough to be who you are and who you want to be, and you're courageous enough to talk about the things that make it hard to move in life, then you're suddenly able to push forward. It's things like suicidal thoughts are a taboo subject. La majorité des gens ne pensent pas de parler de pensées suicidaires, but I do because I live with them. A couple times a year, I do at a moment where I do live with suicidal thoughts. It's not negative too because I am able to deal with them and I talk about it with the people around me. It's actually a symptom of depression. It's actually a flag that I need to use to figure out what's happening in my life. Once you have the courage and ability to talk openly about what you live with and who you are as a person, then slowly you can start adding tools in your toolbox that enables you to be more successful. If you are thinking, well, it's one thing for a white man to talk about this, but what am I myself? Well, the reality is it is easier for me as a white man to talk about these things. And that is part of the drama of mental well-being. It's not just society, our brain that makes us feel depressed. The microaggression that women can feel towards men, that people from different coming from all over the world, from different religions, skin colors and such, feel on a daily basis because they're not white men, that is part of feeling depressed, that is part of feeling anxious. And it's where you need to look at moving forward in your life to feel better. It's really about all of those little things you don't even realize exist around you, but are significantly hurting the mental and physical well-being of the people around you. Pour moi, un des éléments qui a été très game changer dans ma vie a été le jour où que j'ai réalisé que, pour moi, la seule personne qui pouvait m'aider à aller mieux, comme je le disais tantôt, c'est moi-même. Ça ne veut pas dire que je pouvais le faire sans aide de médecins, ça ne veut pas dire que je pouvais le faire sans aide de mon entourage. Ça voulait dire que je devais arrêter d'attendre après les autres pour me faire sentir mieux. Parce que pendant des années, j'allais voir des meilleurs médecins, j'allais voir des meilleurs psychologues en pensant que c'est eux qui allaient réussir à me faire aller mieux. C'est pas ça la réalité. La réalité, c'est que ça part de nous. Relief, l'organisme dont je suis le président, a développé ce qu'on appelle le soutien à l'autogestion, self-management support. What it means that what Relief, the organization I'm chairman for, is doing is that by equipping yourself with knowledge about anxiety, about depression, about bipolar disorder, about dyslexia and such, you are able to slowly start building the life you deserve and want because you have the tools to do so. It's completely stupid that schools don't teach about anxiety and depression, so unfortunately, you need to find alternative ways to learn about it. The stats are pretty disastrous when you're talking about global mental health well-being during COVID. Before COVID, the World Health Organization declared that depression was a pandemic. So it wasn't because of COVID that mental health declined. It did decline significantly during COVID, but the reality, it's been a problem that's been getting better for many, many years that we haven't been taking charge on. If you're in university right now, if you're a student, I'm sure you're stressed about this overall state of the environment and the lack of action taken by world leaders towards the environment. That is part of your mental well-being because that fact that you're stressed about climate change will make you unable to act about climate change because it may freeze you from moving into action and taking action. It doesn't mean that there's nothing to stress about when it comes to climate change. I agree that there's a dramatic problem coming in front of us that it seems that world leaders are not taking seriously. But what we're trying to do when it comes to climate change is not to save the planet. We're trying to save humanity to be able to live on the planet we're in. Because if we're all gone tomorrow, the planet would be just fine. Just look at the first few months of COVID and how overall ecosystems around the world started blooming again. What we need to change are mentalities. And in order to change mentalities, you need to start taking risk in your own life to push forward and saying, you know what? I am going to be the person I want to be and not the one that others are wanting to be. And I'll use that power to start bringing change in the world. And if you're basing your state of who you are in the world based on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or others, you're actually taking the wrong approach. Those people are not telling you who you should be. They're showing you a vision of life that doesn't exist. I was part of the largest festivals in the world. I was part of working with the biggest celebrities in the world. Paul McCartney, Oprah, Madonna, Metallica, name it, I worked with them. I was around them. I saw the people that were around them. Most of them were unhappy, and even if the filter they put online showing that they were happy seemed to be real, it was not real. They live with the same issues that you live in on a day-to-day basis. They're just making it look better online. So when you take your inspiration about who you want to be online about something that's not real, then your entire foundation of your life becomes unstable. And that also leads to a decline in your overall mental well-being. And when you start working in a company and the managers make you feel that you're incompetent, that you don't have the right skill sets to move forward and such, again, it has an effect on your well-being, and the company doesn't realize it may be too stupid to leverage the ability you bring to the table, and you need to be the one and the champion of your own self to show it to them. And that's where it's a duality in the workplace. It's not just about the leaders in the workplace needing to do their part. Trust me, leaders in the workplace need to do their own part as well. And it is one of the things, I'm very involved in myself, is getting leaders and businesses to understand that it's not true that they're not able to affect the mental well-being of the workers. But if you are starting a career and you are in a new workplace and you don't feel that you're able to be yourself, by giving yourself the education and the tools to bring proper value to the workplace, you're suddenly able to empower other people to see things differently. The reality of the workplace today is that it's super easy to recruit new employees. So it used to be a market where employers were king, now employees are king. So employers are actually scared of losing employees because recruitment costs a lot of money. Maintaining the employees in place costs a lot of money, and whenever someone leaves, then they have to start training them again. And when you look at the overall financial picture of a business, it's a dirty secret, but the reality is there's a lot more money being spent on things like disability programs where people get paid when they need to take sick leave or burn out in a job. That can have a significant negative effect on the overall success of a business if it starts costing too much, and the cost of those programs have been increasing dramatically in the last few years. When you start understanding what your own mental well-being, being good, can bring to the table and convince people based on facts that you can bring to them, then suddenly you help the other people around you as well in feeling better. And the workplace can be seen as a scary place, and I can tell you there's a big disconnect from people entering the workplace right now and the people that have been working for 15, 20, 25 years, seeing the newcomers in the workplace and not speaking the same language. Because it is true, like every generation, the new generation that you are coming to the workplace is different. You're probably more different than all of the others previously because of the internet, because of the ability to connect to anyone around the world instantly that didn't exist when I was 10 or 12. Even when I was 18, there was not the level of technology that we live in with today. The internet was around, but most people were not on it as much as I was. I spent way too much time online in those years, but that was part of my own journey and discovering who I am. And the workplace can be a place that you feel fulfilled and happy if you come to the table with a positive attitude and help the employer come to the table with a positive attitude as well. And that starts from you. That said, what I can tell you is that it's definitely not just up to you, and there are workplaces that are harder than others, but there's one thing in common with all those workplaces: they strive to make more money. So if you bring them a way for the employees to be feeling better and yourself feeling better and the company making more money, then suddenly your idea will be genius and you'll be able to move forward. But life's not just about work. Life's about relationship. One of the things that we spend the most time on while we're on earth is with our loved ones, with our families, with our friends, with the people around us, people we work with, people that we go in social gatherings like this with. Those relationships are based on one fundamental truth. We say what we need out of the other person, and they say what they need back to us. Unfortunately, one of the largest effects of mental health distress when it comes to relationships is because people don't actually say what they need out of other people. I mentioned that I have suicidal thoughts. I mentioned that I have ups and downs throughout the year. I make sure that when I do, and when I start feeling in a more depressed phase or anxious phase, I try to equip people around me with the knowledge to know what I need out of them when I'm in that situation. So I'm not upset at them for telling me something. If I tell them that, hey, by the way, if I'm too abrupt, please tell me because I'm in a phase that makes me more abrupt, and someone tells me, hey, you're more abrupt, I'm not upset because I've asked them to tell me. They didn't do it out of the blue. The same way in a relationship, if you don't tell your partner what you want out of them, how do you want them to guess what you want? What they guess is typically wrong, and what you guess for them is typically wrong. And that's usually the root for fighting, the root for arguing, the root for disagreements, both in a romantic, friendship, or professional life. Just owning who you are and putting it out there for the world to see, and understanding the values that are important to you and telling the people around you, and being courageous enough to tell the people around you what you need when you don't feel good, is an amazing way to increase your mental health positively and your overall well-being positively. Where all of this leads is that we are at the root of our success to be happy, regardless of what we live with. Bipolar disorder that I live with means that I'm going from highs to lows during the year. Dyslexia means that when people talk to me, I'm not able to write it down without making mistakes. OCD means I get obsessive about things that I just cannot get out of my head. And all of those conditions haven't stopped me from being the person I am today. Learning more and more about them actually made me a better human and a better person. The person I was 15 and 10 years ago was not able to come on stage and talk about himself and about a subject like mental health because I was struggling to identify with who I really was, and I was struggling to deal with what was going on inside of me. Ever since that I decided to take an approach that is positive, living with what is considered to be illnesses, I actually found more positive aspects of living with them than not living with them. So if you offered me tomorrow to remove every illness that I have and become someone that's normal, my answer would be hell no. I don't want that because the person I am makes me happy, makes me fulfilled, and the ups and downs of bipolar disorder are actually enabling me to push myself forward in a much healthier way. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, and Florent will join me briefly as well to ask a few questions, but would be happy to answer any questions you have about myself or how I deal with mental health or any advices that you may need when it comes to mental health. Keep in mind that I'm not a therapist, but I'm definitely happy to tell you how I've been dealing with things my entire life. So.
Pardon, excuse-moi. Je te propose qu'on s'assoie peut-être pour que je te pose quelques questions.
Bien sûr.
Puis, ouais, tu peux te rapprocher un peu si tu veux. Si on peut remettre les slides aussi pour que les gens aient le lien pour aller sur Slido pour qu'ils puissent poser des questions en ligne, ce serait pratique. J'ai quand même une question qui est déjà là en ligne et qui est... I'm going to switch to English. You did the whole presentation in English, so let's stay in that language.
Sure.
I know you can switch. But it's maybe more for the people who are watching online. The question was, what do you recommend to young entrepreneurs dealing with failure?
Well, failure is part of the journey of any entrepreneur. Failure is part of the journey of life. If you're scared of failing, definitely don't become an entrepreneur. It is there to help you forward. Failure, when you look at it while you're living it, is something that brings you way down. Failure, when you look at it 5 years later, you realize actually brought you somewhere that was a lot better for you and what you were trying to do than what you were trying to do back then. So for me, the best way to deal with failure is to stop hating on yourself, learn from the failures, make sure you don't fail again for the same reasons, get rid of anger and live it positively and give yourself time to breathe and then start again, learning from that failure and try to do it better.
That's good advice, I think. I'm checking. So I have another message. Congrats for being yourself and not afraid to open up about your struggles and help others. That's not a question, but I think it's always nice to receive compliments, right?
Indeed. Well, thank you very much. It's definitely always nice.
And I think that's a really important mission for you, and I think that's a mission that we need to take into account. What's the first thing that every organization should start doing now, today, to improve the mental health of their employees? Because often it's hard to notice when we say something that is harmful for someone else. What is the number one thing we should start doing?
I'd say any organization, if they have a book of internal policies, they should read it and ask employees for their feedback for every single thing in there. Because they'll realize that all of their damn policies are hurting the employees inside of the business constantly. If you look at a policy like if someone dies in your immediate family, you get 2 days off to deal with that. How does that make any sense? And then the second thing is listen to the people you're working with. If they have something to say, if they have something to share, then find a way to deal with it without becoming a therapist. If someone has young kids and they have to pick them up at daycare at 4 p.m. every day, and you make them work until 4:30 every day, how is that going to be positive for the person? They're just going to be stressed all day because they'll know that every day they miss the deadline for daycare. Their kids are unhappy, daycare is unhappy, they show up at home, dinner's already, they're stressed, so they're stressed their entire life. If you stop them from working at 3 p.m. and tell them just work the remaining hours whenever you want during the week, well, they'll be productive for their hours instead of being stressed out.
So, and I think that's wonderful advice. How do we help and teach? Because I think the problem that a lot of organization people might face is there's no one answer for everybody. Like there's no one magical method that's going to work for everybody and make everybody happy. As you said, maybe someone is going to want to work until 4 to go fetch their kids, but someone else might want to work till 6. So this guy or girl might start later in the morning, for example. But what happens and what is hard is, as human beings, we tend to compare, right? And to think, well, I arrive earlier in the morning, so I feel like I'm doing more, and not take into account the reality of the other human being. Empathy is a hard thing to learn. How can we learn empathy in a better way, and how can we help team members and employees and coworkers, students around us to be better at that part of the thing?
It's not an easy question, and there's many ways.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, but it's a good one. Well, the leader of any organization, the teacher in a class, the CEO in a business, the manager for a team is the first person that can bring empathy to a group. If the leader of a group is not empathic, there's no way the group's allowed to be. So if the leader of a group tells people, you know what, I won't always be there at 7 in the morning, I'll take days off, I'll take vacations, well, the people in that group feel okay being that way as well. So I'd say it often starts with enabling the leader to see that they'll live a happier life professionally and personally by being that way, and they'll help a lot more people to feel that way as well.
Thank you. How about there's one thing, and I know it's been getting really popular, especially in HR and in companies. It's the mindfulness meditation and all of these things. What is your stance on that? Does it work? Does it work for everyone? How should it be applied?
Yeah, I'm never a strong believer in. J'aime pas les sectes. I don't think that any one thing is good. Mindfulness is an amazing, positive, and powerful thing for the people. It's an amazing and powerful thing for. If you tell me to meditate during a panic attack, instead of being better, I'll end up in the ER because I'm definitely not doing well. Meditation doesn't help me during panic attacks. It helps me in other times. By trying to use a one-size-fits-all approach in HR, you forget that every human is different, and you become obsessed, a sect, where you want everyone to think a single way and bring everyone in that direction. Is it positive for a lot of people? Mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and such? For sure, it is positive. Is it positive for all people? For others, it may be video game that's as effective as yoga.
Yeah, I use video games for that. Maybe one last question turned a little bit more toward the students in the audience. A while ago, and for Campus Party, we started working with academic working groups. And one of the problems that was mentioned by a lot of students was, and there's a lot of issues that were mentioned regarding COVID, but one was time management, because it's not taught, right? So how time management and performance anxiety, and you talked about anxiety a lot, and I think time management falls into all of that at some point. What would be like your one advice to someone who's struggling with time management?
Time travel. we all struggle with the management of our time, regardless if you're a student or a worker with 20 years of experience. Taking control of your schedule and not letting other people run it for you. Of course, if you have class and you have to go to it. But there's a ton of other things in your life that you can look at and have a real impact. If you stay for 45 minutes in bed in the morning reading Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, then that 45 minutes can be invested in something that actually makes you feel better in the day. If you take every single minute of your days and analyze them, you'll find a lot more time that is free in your schedule than you imagine. And the second time is if you take the time every day when you don't feel as well, when you feel overworked and such, to write up what happened right before and during that moment and why, and do it for a couple weeks and read it again, you'll start seeing trends of people you do that are not good for you. And you'll realize by making little tweaks in your schedule, you'll actually start doing things that make you feel better and feel that you have more time.
So I have a few questions here from the chats. The first one, and it's an easy one, but I think it's a really important one. How can people contact you if they have questions?
They can time travel to my time, first of all.
That's a good way.
But no, contact me is easy. You go on LinkedIn, you go on Facebook, you go on Twitter. I'm on all platforms. You write to me and I answer. So don't hesitate to write to me. LinkedIn's the easiest way to get to me. Add me on LinkedIn and send me a message and I'll be happy to chat with you. And if you need help for mental health, Relief is there for monrelief.ca, myrelief.ca. Organization been around for 30 years, giving free support for anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. Don't hesitate to reach them.
Perfect. Any regrets about things you did in the past that now you look back and see that the new self would do differently?
My entire life.
Well,
I mean, looking back with the gift of looking back, it always makes you regret a lot of things. I don't regret my past. Do I regret the pain I've given people before knowing I live with bipolar disorder? For sure. Do I regret burning people out of my companies because I didn't know how to manage them properly and I just thought that working nonstop was good? Yes, I do regret that. I regret the pain I've given others. Do I regret my career, my decisions and such? I think I would not be where I am today if I didn't make those decisions. So no, I don't regret them.
There's a famous speech from Steve Jobs that says we can only connect the dots when we look back, right? So I think there's a lot of things to learn from introspection and taking the time sometimes to look back and see how we can progress from there. Somebody is saying, students are stressed out more than ever in these times. It's trying times, getting back to school, and this semi-post-COVID space where some students are getting back to presential physical school in person. Yeah. Others are still online but are dreading going back to school. What would be your advice and your feedback to them to help with all that stress that's coming their way?
Well, if you're feeling anxious about something, you should get help. You should call an organization like Relief. Vous devriez appeler les organisations Relief si vous avez besoin d'aide. Si vous vous sentez stressé, il y a des outils et des trucs que vous pouvez mettre pour changer ça. So don't think you have to face that alone. Your family probably are not the right people to give you advice. Sometimes your friend may not even be the right people to give you advice on how to deal with these things. There are professionals that are lovely and super helpful that can actually help you make a lot of sense about that. And when it comes to dreading coming back in school or dreading going online in school, well, stop dreading things that you can't control. And start instead trying to control the things that make you happy and invest time and energy in that. If you need to take a break from school because it makes you miserable, then take a break from school and come back the next semester while you made a plan to be successful in doing so. Don't drive yourself crazy because you think someone's forcing you to do it. Do the right thing for you and get the help you need to structure things in a way that's positive for you and move forward.
I think that's amazing advice to conclude this session. Thank you, Martin, for being here. Thank you for talking about this topic. That's also important to tackle because you said it during your talk. Depression is not something new. It was a pandemic before COVID, and I It might go worse before it gets better. So, yeah, reach out to Martin if you need help. Reach out to Relief. Reach out to whatever organization can help. And thank you, Martin.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Before leaving the stage, this was the last time I'm seeing you on stage today. I'll be back Sunday, but I'm gonna call my wonderful partner on the stage, Laura.